The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this Monday morning. And we are going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. Whether you're a parent, teacher, practitioner, working with an individual who's on the autism spectrum, or you yourself are on the autism spectrum, we hope to be a resource for you, a free resource to help connect you to the kinds of things that will help you to get more support, more services, and have more progress. We talk about progress all the time because we know it's possible. Progress is absolutely possible. If you've been hearing that downer conversation about autism and hearing about there's nothing you can do, that there are just these behaviors and that they're going to happen, you've come to the right place because we don't subscribe to that. We see individuals all the time who are making great progress and leading great lives. And that's what we want to help you to get to. As we start out the show, I always like to remind you of a couple of things. Emily's going to show you some of the different ways on the screen that you can get in touch with us here because this entire show is meant to be interactive. Now, right now, still today, there's only one place to watch us live. That's at www.autism-live.com. Very soon, hopefully by the end of the week, we're going to have another way for you to watch us live. But right now, if you go to autism-live, what you will see, you'll see a lovely desktop. There's a computer screen graphic that's there. And if you're watching us on a typical computer, then you will see the show playing there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you are watching on a tablet, you're going to, at this moment in time, see nada. But hopefully by the end of the week, you will see a picture there as well, because we will be streaming it live onto tablets as well soon. Hopefully by the end of the week. But when you also go there, whether you're on a tablet or you're on a PC, you will, or on a laptop, you will see, or an iBook, whatever it is that you personally have. There's also a white box next to that computer screen, and on all of your devices, that should be active all the time. We're trying to keep that open all the time in any case. You can put your cursor there and type a topic that you would like to see more about, a question that you have, something that you would like for us to ask one of our experts. Now, here's the important thing to remember about that. Because we're keeping that feature open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I don't have a reference to what you're watching in the time that you write the question. That's the only rub. It's totally free, by the way. You don't have to log in. There's no credit card. Nobody gets your name, your personal information. You're not on a mailing list. You're typing that information in. It comes to me blind. So if you want me to get back to you, if there's something that you desperately need me to get back to you, then you need to put that in the message, and I can edit it out before I show it to our viewers at home. Also, if you are watching, and like I said, if there's a question that you have about something and you say, I want you to ask your guest, make sure you're saying what the guest's name is or what the topic is. Some of you are sending incomplete sentences and just saying, and then, it's okay. Somebody sent in something that said sensory integration dysfunction. So my assumption is that you want to know what that is and you want some more information about it. If you want to be more specific, I can give you more specific information. Somebody else wrote in about concentration. And so that was the entire sentence, concentration. What would you like to know about concentration? Do you want to know how to build certain concentration skills? And give me more information. Is it that you want to know how to build concentration skills in a 5-year-old who's profoundly affected by autism? Or do you want to learn how to do that with an 18-year-old who's at college and is really making great headway, but they're having trouble concentrating? So the more information you give me, the more I can do for you. As I always say, I'm not an expert in autism. I'm an autism parent, and I gave up mind reading to be an autism parent. So help me out. Help a girl out. So in any case, that's my deal. I am not an expert in autism. I'm a parent. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. At that time, he was very profoundly affected. I'm very happy to say that he's made such great strides that in just 2 days, he's going to start 5th grade, and he has been fully included since kindergarten. He will be in 5th grade with no support in the classroom, and he's at the top of his class. And that's miraculous. And I still don't know where we're going to end up on this spectrum, but I know that it continues to get better, and we grow and we problem solve along the way, and that I'm not just lucky, but let's admit that I'm lucky. But we also did a great deal of hard work, and we found the right people to help us to do that. And I think that everyone should be treated to that. So that's part of what this journey is for me here, is to help and support you to find your connection to whatever is best for your individual self or your child. So I invite you to ask as many questions as you want. And, we're a little bit behind on our question answering, but we're catching up. We took some hiatus over the summer, and you guys kept asking questions, which was great. And I'm catching up, and you're being patient with me, which I appreciate. But we want to help you. All right. So that's what we're here doing here. And what we like to start with every morning is something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we make sense of one word, one phrase, one acronym. We put it in a context. First, we give you an actual definition that sometimes is just so full of jargon that you really can't wade through it even with hip garters on. But then we give you a working definition, hopefully put it into some sort of perspective so that you can get your head around it today of how does this affect my life today? How is this useful to me? That's always the question that I'm asking. What does this matter to me? I'm a very busy person. I got things to do, places to go. I got OT, not anymore. But one time I had all those places I had to go to, and I didn't have time to fool around with a bunch of language that I didn't understand. As the years ticked on, after autism lived in our house, I really began to see how important understanding what the jargon is. So that's why we do this every morning. So our word today is going to be really important to all of us. If this has not been a part of your life, you need to make it a part of your life. Okay? And the word that we're talking about is extinction. Now, I don't know about you, but the first time I heard this said in an autism context, I was thinking about dinosaurs and white leopards and how we don't want for them to be extinct. But let's face it, there's certain things, certain behaviors, certain things that come along with autism that we'd like to make extinct. And it's just behavior. And so we can change and change the dial. So let's look at our actual definition of extinction within a context of looking at autism and behavior. Extinction: a procedure in which reinforcement is withheld or no longer occurs following the incidence of a behavior. Okay. Really important that we get our heads around this, and you might think, I don't quite get it. We got all this talk about reinforcement. Remember, reinforcement is just a reward. So let's look at our working definition, see if we can't pare it down a little bit more. Removing or no longer providing whatever has been maintaining a behavior you want to decrease. All right. Rule number 1 that we've talked about always on this show is that we understand from the rules of behavior that in order for any behavior to happen again and again and again, it must be rewarding in some way to the individual. It has to be, or none of us do it. We just will stop doing it. If you think about anything that you said, hey, I'm going to start that new diet plan, or hey, I'm going to start that new workout plan, or hey, I'm going to start, doing this, volunteering or whatever. Fabulous. And you start out and you do so well, and you do it for 2 weeks, and then the 3rd week you're not doing it as much, and then by the 4th week it's not happening, and the 5th week it's gone, right? Because it wasn't reinforcing enough to maintain it. We always want to get to a point where it's got enough of a paycheck that we'll keep doing it. Think about the things that you do all the time. You do them because you're getting some sort of a paycheck for them. Well, the same is true for all the negative things that we do. If we're watching too much TV, if we're eating too much, if you're smoking cigarettes, if you're, just not getting stuff done, if you're procrastinating, there's a paycheck for it, right? So So think about our kids now with autism, that they've got behaviors that they engage in that are really preventing them from learning, that are preventing them from connecting to the things that they want to be able to do. It gets in their way. And we want to change that equation, right? So sometimes in some behaviors, when we find the function of the behavior and we realize, okay, for instance, this particular behavior is happening because it's getting attention. Yep, it's getting negative attention, but remember, that doesn't matter. If it's getting attention, it's still a paycheck if it's negative attention. And we want to change this behavior. So in that instance, and we have control over who gives the attention, because sometimes we don't, but if there's a circumstance in which we do, let's say that the child is biting mom, because when they bite mom goes, "Don't do that. I've told you before not to do that. That's a really bad thing. And now you and I I'm going to go and put you in the corner." But that amount of tension from mom is enough to keep that happening. So what we want to do is this procedure extinction, which cuts off the reinforcement. It's like cutting off the blood supply to the behavior. So if we know that attention is what's feeding it, then we say to mom, we're going to try to work things so that this behavior doesn't happen. But if it does happen, you must not give the attention for it. So if, worst case scenario, you get into a situation and your child bites you, you're going to remove the child from you and you're going to get very busy with something. You're not going to allow yourself to keep being bitten, but you are not going to address the biting. Oh my gosh, it's the hardest thing in the world to do. And yet it works. Because and then, sometimes the child will try to bite again, which we want to make sure we block, because they go, well, this worked before. I'm going to bite you again to see if it works. But if we hold true to this not reacting to it, then the child will stop biting for the purpose of attention. It really is an amazing thing. I've seen this work with my child. You just cut off the paycheck. Now, does this work for kids who aren't on the autism spectrum? You betcha. Does this work for adults? If somebody's really giving you a hard time and they're engaging in a behavior, whether it's your 14-year-old who's completely neurotypical or somebody in your office, if you think to yourself, okay, what is the paycheck that they're getting for this? And how can I turn this on its side? If I don't give the paycheck for it, maybe the paycheck is that you lose your temper. And there's something about that they find really pleasurable. Right? Maybe the paycheck is stop and consider. My son is very good at this one. If he gets me mad, then I'll talk about it, because I want to talk about it when I'm mad. And that means he gets out of whatever the thing is that he was being asked to do. So if I ask him to do something and he says something outrageous, I'll go, "Is that how you talk to me?" And it's escape. He doesn't really care about the attention in that moment. What he cares about is that while I'm yammering at him, while my gums are flapping, he got out of it. So really essential that we understand what the function of the behavior is before we institute an extinction process. But what I learned over the years is that if my son's trying to escape something and get out of it, it doesn't matter how much attention I provide or I don't provide, but I don't even let him escape for a second. And that's how we put that on extinction. And what happens is that the behavior will go extinct. You see the combination? But remember that it doesn't just necessarily mean ignoring. This has been the hardest thing for me to explain to people in our surrounding, to my family. There's certain behaviors I'm not going to pay attention to, and it drives them crazy. And then they go, "Oh, well, then whenever he misbehaves, we're not going to give attention to it." No, only when it's for attention. Right? Sometimes he doesn't care where the attention happens, but he's doing it to escape something. So it really depends on the behavior. And we really want to think of this and understand that it's cutting off the behavior from its blood supply. It doesn't automatically mean don't give the attention for it at all. It's cutting off the behavior from its reward. That's extinction, and it can be a very, very powerful tool. But before you try to institute this on yourself, I would encourage using an expert who's helping you to figure out what the function of the behavior is. Otherwise, extinction can be dangerous if you don't know what the proper function of the behavior is. All right, there's our jargon for the day. We always have a question of the day for you. And today's is particularly poignant for us. We want to know, has your child ever wandered or eloped? We know in Pediatrics Magazine, they recently reported a new study that showed that from their results that they believe that 54% of children on the autism spectrum will at some point engage in wandering, eloping, bolting, whatever you'd like to call it. So we'd like to do an informal survey from you guys. Has your child ever done that? I would venture that 54 is a pretty conservative number if we consider ever. Has your child ever engaged in wandering or elopement? I know that my son did. And he... it was an everyday sort of thing from the time that he regressed into autism. If you put him down on his legs and he could run, he would just go. He would head for the hills and go. And I don't even know that he was going to any place in particular, but he just enjoyed the sensation of running, and he would run anywhere. So my husband and I lived in fear forever. And then we had so many locks on the door. It was like Fort Knox. We all slept in one room, as I know many of you have reported to us that you do, because I couldn't sleep. Thinking he was very mechanically inclined, and everyone would say, well, just put, the locks and do this and bar the window. And I couldn't rest for fear that he would be gone. And then one day in between therapy sessions, when he was 3, he went out the door. He managed to, he got up on a chair and he thought it through. He was 3 and didn't have a lot of verbal communication, but thought it through to take his little therapy chair over to the door while I was cooking lunch and on the phone, multitasking. But you have things you got to do. And he went over to the door, got up on the chair, undid all of the locks because he could just that day reach all of them, got off the chair, pulled the chair away, and opened the door and was gone. And I heard something, in that mommy instinct. And so he didn't quite make it to the street. And I consider myself really, really lucky because of that. And every day, as we see more reports of children wandering and eloping, I really have a moment where I think, there but for the grace of God go I, because it really could have happened to me. And I know pretty much every parent we've ever had on the show has said, that could be me. And I really take it personally when people pass judgment on parents whose children have slipped away. And they go, well, who was watching them and why weren't they watching them well enough? I really take exception to that, because it's impossible to be vigilant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for decades on end. So we get into a place of having to talk about what can we do. So I would love it if you guys would write in and talk about wandering and elopement. There are parents out there who don't understand how vital it is that they get help and support. So write in and tell us if it's ever happened to you. I have a feeling it will be a lot of yeses. And we are going to talk about this because we always have a topic of our week. And our topic this week is dealing with these kinds of things under the broad category of safety. Of course, eloping and wandering and bolting are not the only things that our kids will engage in that put them at risk. But it's one of the first things that we need to consider, and we have to get proactive about it. Every week, it seems like we have another story that we have to cover, and last week was no exception. We talked about this a little bit on Friday with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, Anthony Kuznia, who went missing last Wednesday, and his body was found on Thursday evening. Now, statistically, when kids wander, if they are found and if they are not alive, the death happens usually from one of two ways, either in water, and we know that our kids are particularly drawn to water, or they're hit by a car. And we're going to talk about this today because I had a conversation over the weekend that really brought home to me how much this has to be talked about. With all the families, we need to provide you with strategies for ways that you can keep your kids safe, and that's really what we're going to be talking about all week long with all of our experts and listening to you guys about things that you've done to ensure that your child is safe. But beyond that, working on things so that our children can get to the point where it is not as frightening. There is no way with any child, on the spectrum or not, to ensure that they're safe all the time. And that's the horrible reality of being a parent. But we do our jobs. We do everything that we can. We've got some tools that we're going to talk to you about this week that hopefully will help you to ensure that your child is as safe as they possibly can be. All right, so some of the things that we have going on today, in just a little while, we're going to be joined by our really lovely guest that we get every other Monday, Monica Holloway. She is a critically acclaimed author and a fabulous autism mom and really an outspoken advocate for all of us, and she's just a joy and a delight. A little bit later on today, we have a stress tip for you, and we have some ABA basics for safety for you a little bit later on today. So all of that and more, and your responses and your questions on the live feature and on Facebook. So stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
For the month of August, I figured we'd do some fun in the sun activity. We're going to make our very own frozen bowling game. It's super fast and super easy. I was inspired by some lessons I saw in skills. All right, so let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are water, water bottles, balloon, and food coloring, which is always optional. First step you're going to do is make your bowling ball, since it'll have to freeze overnight. The first thing I'm going to do is take my balloon and put a few drops of food coloring in it. This is optional. If you don't have food coloring or your child has an allergy to it, don't use it, but I thought it'd be fun to make everything super colorful. So, I have my food coloring. I'm going to put a few drops in here. And then, take this to the sink and fill it up with water and tie a knot. Here's my balloon filled with water and the food coloring. I'm going to take this and place it in the freezer with some towels just so it holds its shape better. Our next step is to make the bowling pins. I have 10 recycled water bottles that I've refilled with water. Now I'm going to put some food coloring in them.
Straight to the center at full speed. Light will surround you in a blink of an eye.
Now that my bowling ball is frozen and my pins have been filled with water, let's go outside and play with these.
See all the colors in the sky tonight. It's time to let the sunshine hide.
I hope you and your family have fun with the frozen bowling game like I did with my friend Emily. Well, until next time, craft on, guys. Bye.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's our time for our weekly stress talk. And today I want to talk a little bit about, since we were talking about safety all this week, I want to take a moment. I know I've shared before on the show that I suffer from OCD and that after my son was diagnosed with autism, I moved into full-on panic disorder. So I know a little bit about stress when you have a child on the autism spectrum. I know a lot about anxiety and coping with it. And I just keeping it real and being incredibly honest, I got to the point where I couldn't leave my home. I didn't think I was ever going to drive a car again. I really had moved into that headspace where it was like, well, I'm just not going to go out. And I had a moment where I saw something on television about a parent who missed their child's graduation from high school, didn't get to see all kinds of things that their child did, and that affected me profoundly, and I thought, oh, I should really do something about this, but I don't know what. And then what really tipped the balance for me was that I did manage to leave the house on a given day, and my son had what I can only describe was like a mirror panic attack, that he was in the car and he said, we should go home. I don't feel good. I feel like I'm dying, which, were all the things that I was thinking and feeling and apparently saying from time to time. In any case, I got some help. I got some really good cognitive behavioral therapy, and my husband and I stumbled upon that quite by accident. But I got some really good cognitive behavioral therapy, and in the process of that, we talked about all of my fears and all of my obsessions and all of those different things. But what really came home, there was one day when the therapist said to me, you know what, you're a smart person, Shannon. You're fearful of all these things and getting all upset about all these little things. What's it really about? What's really at the bottom of all this? And I said, what are you talking talking about? And she said, well, often with obsession, you will focus on something minute that you can manage because there's something big that you feel like you can't manage. That was a new concept to me. Nobody had ever explained obsession to me in that way. And I sat there and I said, I have no idea. And she said, really? Think about it. What's the big thing that you just don't want to face? And, she was a very good therapist. It was within the confines of her office. And I just started to talk. And I said the thing that I didn't want to say, which I just said to you guys in the last segment. I can't keep my child safe 100%. No matter what I do, I can't keep him 100% safe. And because I didn't want to face that, I was in this endless loop of all these little things that I was going to try to take control over, like hairspray in our house, like chemicals, things that are sometimes important, like we don't want to expose our kids to chemicals, but I was spending all of my time on that and becoming paralyzed because of it. And what I learned through cognitive behavioral therapy is that sometimes you have to say the big scary, and you have to say it with people you trust. You don't just, because it will bring on some anxiety. And oh my, did it. In that moment, I remember saying, I don't want to feel this way. Do something. Knock me out. Let's talk about something else. I remember saying, let's talk about baseball. Anything. I want to get my mind out of this space because it can be very frightening to realize how much we have to trust the universe to let our children walk around outside of us. And, but she talked me through it, and I began to realize, okay, that really is the big deal for me, that I wanted to duct tape him to a wall to keep him safe. We can't do that with our kids. But we have to deal with all those feelings that we have. And I do think that the anxiety and the obsession that comes with it can best be put to rest by taking some other action. By the way, we do this with our kids. If our kids are stressing and they start to do some sort of a repetitive motion, we want to give them something else that is soothing to help soothe, but is more socially acceptable. We do this for ourselves by saying, okay, what can I take control over? I always go back to the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I can't take control over the entire universe. I can't even take control over my child, but I can give him skills. I can work really hard to give him skills, and we can focus on that and take time to teach those skills. And when I do that, then I can let go. And I can say, we've worked hard. We're doing everything that we can. And I can let the leash lengthen a little bit at a time. Heaven knows. I always joke about how he's going to go off to college and I'm going to be in the apartment around the corner, and I kind of mean it. But the leash gets a little bit longer all the time. But for my personal stress, I cannot do that unless I'm thinking it through and saying, okay, what am I worried about right now? Is it something that I can take control of? Is there some aspect of this that I can take control of? What can I take control of? Oh, I can teach him this. I can't control what other people are going to do. And in a given moment, I can't control what my child is going to do, but I can prepare him as best as I can. And I can tell you that when I do that, and I acknowledge what the fear is, the stress goes down to a manageable place where I can stay in motion. Because if I get paralyzed, the teaching stops. And that's not my goal. My goal is to teach my child so that he can be as safe as possible. And remembering to breathe and to keep moving. So that's my tip for you. Name it, say what your fear is, and then ask yourself, what can you take control of? Same thing that we do with our kids that wander. If that's your fear, face it. Don't be in denial about it and say, all right, what do I need to do to make my child as safe as possible? Do I need to start with a fence? Do I need to get a BCBA in here to work on this? Do I need to, I have to figure out what the function of this wandering is, and then I'm going to teach other things. By the way, parents who do this are wildly successful. We can teach our children not to bolt, not to wander, but you got to get out of the fear and the denial and move into the action. And that will lower your stress as well. Okay. I hope that you will, and I hope that you'll write and tell us how it works for you. And if you need help, if you're in that place where the fear and the obsession, and if you're like where I was, where you're not leaving the house, raise your hand and ask for some help. Get some cognitive behavioral therapy or something else that will help you, so that you can move past that point. It's worth it. You're worth it. Your kids are worth it. Your life is worth it, and it will help. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I believe that we're going to be joined by Monica Holloway, so stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest in the studio with us right now is Monica Holloway. She's a critically acclaimed author of the book, the wonderful memoir, Cowboy and Wills, which I just absolutely love and adore. And you are a mom. You're an autism mom. And your son, Wills, is 16 now and doing amazingly well. But you're an outspoken advocate for...
Most definitely.
Don't cringe when I say that, because I think that as a compliment.
Well, I know. I mean, yes, I just wish I didn't have to be so loud about it.
Yes, but you know what? You're helping me to be louder. You really, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, you're helping me to realize how important it is to speak up in the moment and say what you need to say. Because otherwise we're not going to turn this around. And people have really wrong misconceptions about autism.
Right.
And we run into it almost on a daily basis.
Yes.
And I think, I have gotten a little complacent about it. And you have reminded me that I need to put on my big girl pants and speak up. So we will talk about that in just a second. But I I was just saying that our question to all of our audience members today is, did your child ever wander or engage in elopement or wandering? And of course, when we say elopement, this is a word that the autism experts use for when a child leaves an area. At first I thought when I heard elopement, I went, what, go to Niagara Falls, get a wedding? No,
Vegas.
No, this is not what I'm worried about. My child's 3. What are you people talking about? But it's a phrase for when a child or anyone leaves an area without notifying somebody, without permission to go. And a lot of times our kids bolt or wander or elope, and sometimes to their detriment. I mean, it becomes a big safety issue.
Oh my gosh, that would be my biggest fear of all time.
Yeah.
Wills didn't do that.
Great.
I mean, he was so worried about being away from me that he wore me, I wore him like a sweater, basically.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't get him off me, not like, I mean, he literally would climb my clothes and be attached to me. The only time that he bolted, the only time that I can really remember, and I worried about that a lot, is if he would hear a really loud sound that was unexpected, and then he would bolt.
Okay.
And it happened, I want to say it's happened less than 5 times when he was little, but very dangerous. And I don't know if we have time, but one time was in San Diego, and we were down at the at Seaport Village, which was hard for Wills. It was too crowded, and so we went over to the it's not the Marriott, it's the one that's closest to Seaport Village, the big hotel there. And the Hilton, I think it's the Hilton. I don't know what it is, actually. But so we were staying there, and we were by the pool. And we didn't know that there were fireworks coming up in the bay. Yeah. Every Saturday, I guess, they did fireworks back then. So Wills was barely 4. And he was standing beside a lawn chair with me, and I was sitting, and my husband was in the pool, and it was dark. And all of a sudden, we heard go up, and then boom, and he was bolting. Now, I'm in a bathing suit. My husband's in the water, and he's heading down the steps out toward where the trolley cars go.
Oh, my goodness.
Because he loves trains. So he's running toward the trolley cars. And I got him. I mean, I ran. It felt like I wasn't going to get him. I got him before he even got to the road down below. But I had to literally, he was tiny, thank heavens, but I thought, what am I going to do when he outgrows me? How am I going to tackle this kid when he outgrows me? And it happened at a birthday party, too, when Batman came in, a man dressed up like Batman. And I was waiting for Batman. The mother had told me that Batman was going to be there, and she had said very nicely, when Batman comes out, I'll tell you ahead of time so you can take Wills out.
Right.
But, she was having a great time at her son's birthday party, and you get caught up, and she felt very bad. It wasn't her fault, but Batman comes out, and Wills hits the side gate. And this was in Santa Monica. He ran down the street so fast. Those are some horrifying moments.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of families whose children bolted a lot. We had a really amazing child in our neighborhood, but he was nonverbal, and he ran a lot. And in fact, I was in the shower one day, and he climbed through our bathroom window and then went out my front door. So he got out of his house, went through a couple of yards, got in my window, and his mother, so of course I was on him in my robe, and he was a big kid, and I'm yelling for people, can you help me, please?
Yeah.
And it looked like abuse, because he's just a beautiful, normal looking, normal, that's the worst word, sorry, excuse me, forgive me.
But
he didn't look like there was any kind of issue, and there was. And so we finally got him, and there I am in my robe, totally naked underneath, holding this child and telling him it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then his mom was saying, I'm so sorry he came through your window. And I said, don't worry about that.
Right.
I don't care about that.
On the list of things to worry about, that's not one of them.
He wasn't worried about me. He was trying to get out, you know. And I always think about her. Yeah. Because they moved, so I don't know how that ended up going, because now that child must be 25.
Wow. And going back to Wills, what changed? Because clearly he's not engaging in that kind of behavior now at 16. What do you think changed so that kind of bolting? Did you just get more prepared for when a loud noise was going to happen, or did he somehow language through it and figure out that he didn't need to run?
We had to give him one thing that's true about Will's, and I have to always say this because I think I just can't imagine how different it is to have a child that's not on the higher end of the spectrum. So, I mean, I can't imagine, but I mean, I'm lucky in many ways that Will's is a little bit is higher functioning, so that he started to outgrow some of those behaviors through his therapy, but also, you know, neurologically, he was able to sort of, some of his anxieties and some of his worries, he was able to logically understand them as he got older. Right. So then he would hear a loud sound and he would get up to go, and then you could see him, and I'd say, Will's, and he would look at me, and I'd say, look at me, not running, we're not running.
There you go.
He's like, I'm not running, and I'm like, we're not running. We're going inside where it's quiet, but we're not running.
Right.
And he didn't run.
But that's a great intervention because, you know, it sounds like you were doing some things beforehand to talk to him about it, but in the moment having things that you could say to prevent it from happening. And I think it's so important that we all talk about these things because it is very common in the autism community that your kids will engage in these kinds of behaviors. And I think it's interesting that years before, I mean, the first time I ever knew about autism happened because the house that I grew up in, our backyards met other people's backyards, and kitty corner to our backyard was a family who had a child who was on the autism spectrum.
When you were little?
When I was like a teenager.
Wow.
And I didn't really understand what that meant.
Of course.
But he would escape, he would elope, and he would show up on my mother's porch swing. And my mother would see him, and she kept a roll of butter rum lifesavers on her desk, because if she would see him down there, she would yell to everybody and say, Matthew's on the porch swing, get the butter rum lifesavers. And she would go down, and she could keep him there with the butter rum lifesavers swinging, because he loved the butter rum lifesavers and just swing on her porch until the mother could get there.
Oh.
Now, I've since, you know, and I thought that was so lovely that my mother was keeping him safe so that he wasn't running out into the street. But of course, he kept coming back because he loved the swing and he loved the lifesavers,
right.
So, and I always think about that mom because she was a beautiful, I mean, she looked like Jackie Kennedy. You know, she had this beautiful dark hair, and I remembered when they had moved in, she looked so young. And of course, by the time, you know, I went away to college, years had passed, so she looked older, but she looked older than her years because I don't think the woman was getting any sleep.
Oh my goodness.
And that was my first introduction to autism was, and he was completely nonverbal, and all he did was rock. And he wanted to swing and rock, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, interesting that we both had those kinds of, and you had somebody before Will's was born.
Yes.
Yeah, that he came through. Mm-hmm. And then to look back and realize that, you know, you were going to know a lot more about this before the party was over.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, I want to talk some more with you about what Will's is up to, and you had an interesting event that happened this week. You almost always do.
I don't.
So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk with Monica. And if you guys have any questions for Monica, feel free to ask them on the live feature now. But stick with us. We'll be back after these.
You say hi, we say hi. Let's get wild, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome to the show. So the goal of today, we're going to make meatballs. Let's get started. So again, I'm going to take roughly a pound of my ground organic turkey, and I'm going to add in the secret vegetable. So if your kid doesn't like vegetables, don't cook in front of them, okay? Have them watch a movie or something. But you definitely want to make sure they're not watching, because then they won't eat it. So, and here we go with the egg. And our breadcrumbs. I'm just adding salt and pepper to taste. If you think about kids' shapes and sizes, you want to think small shapes, small hands. So your oven should be preheating at about 400 degrees. We're going to kick into the oven here and look at our meatballs. I did flip them halfway through the 20-odd minute. So we'll put, just like Julia Child's, there's our finished product right there. These are good. Cooking is easy. You don't have to be afraid of it. But we want to hear from you. If you can let us know what recipes are important to you, maybe convert a recipe from a traditional flour or gluten-based to a gluten-free or an allergy-free, we're here to help. So you get to us. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. You can reach out on Facebook at facebook.com/autismlive or reach out at Taka Now. So I know you're having a great day. I had a lot of fun cooking with you in the kitchen, but I'll tell you before we end, I got to have more meatballs. Have a great day.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us in the studio is Monica Holloway, critically acclaimed author and fabulous autism mom and autism advocate. I just adore you. I can't say that enough. And we ask you to come in every other week because you're the mom of a teenager, and there are things that have to do with the teen years that as you're discovering them, you're just so eloquent, and we all learn through you as you go through these different things.
It's so funny because I feel so messy. I don't feel eloquent at all, but I do feel like I'm very present. So, I mean, we have to be. I guess parents have to be.
I'm always working on being present.
Well, I still work on it too, of course.
But I love all the things that you talk about because it creates a roadmap for those of us who are coming behind you. And so you mentioned to me during the break that you had a little bit of a thing that happened this last week with Wills. Tell our viewers what happened.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so this was my first. We've talked to Wills about, the medical marijuana issue, and certainly in California, and the green cross or whatever that says there's medical marijuana distributor. And so we've talked about all kinds of drugs. Of course, he's 16, and they've also talked about it at school, and he's talked about it in his social skills group, and the last thing I want him to do is be afraid of talking to us about this. And if something's bothering him or he is curious about something, I want him to be able to ask somebody, if not me, then his dad or his therapist. Or so he's got this great friend named, I won't say his name because he's great because of what I'm about to say, because he's a very cool dude. But he's the son of Wills's aide from elementary school. So since this guy, Bob, we'll call him, was in 6th grade, no, I'll say it's Ripley. He won't care because he's such a cool guy. He won't care that I'll tell you this because actually he's a kind of a hero in the story. So I don't know why I was hesitant. So anyway, Ripley, who's with Wills right now, is a senior at Vassar this fall. Amazing. So he's an incredible child. And when he was in 6th grade, Wills was in kindergarten, and his mother, Ripley's mom, was Wills's aide. So she had this brilliant idea, and I've talked about it in here, of Ripley kind of being with Wills and helping him go to the boys' bathroom and putting the hermit crabs near the urinal, on top of the urinal to help him get in. But Ripley's been with Wills every summer since he was in 6th grade.
Which is great. It's great to have that kind of a boy influence to help with the cool factor and have somebody that they can talk to.
And so much older.
Yes.
So much older.
Yeah.
And this is a kid that's very independent, very, he's hilarious, and he's incredibly social. Yeah. He's so social that sometimes we're like, Ripley, we got to go to sleep. Because he's like, it's like 1 a.m, and he's like, I want to tell you this story. We're like, we would love to, but I'm 50 and I got to go to bed. It's like, so he's just this great kid. Yeah. And so he's so good for Wills. And since he's been with Wills, I mean, who knows the difference because he's been with him forever, is that he really gets Wills talking. Yeah. So he was with Wills last Friday. There was a sale, and I've been trying to not buy clothes because I had a lot of surgery, like we talked about this summer, so I haven't been anywhere. Right. And I have plenty of clothes. So I'm like, you know what? There was a sale at my very favorite place, Koi, in South Pasadena. Have you been there?
No.
It's a perfect store for you.
I was going to ask you where you get your clothes from because you're always like so stylish.
Oh, I don't know.
Like you're comfortable.
They are really comfortable, and they have a sale twice a year, and this was their summer sale. Okay. And it's like this huge event. Okay. So I said to Ripley, I got to go to Koi. Can you come hang out with Wills? He's like, yeah. And I said, listen, I need my car because I've got to go to Pasadena because Ripley has this great old Mustang, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I said, can you stick around close to Sherman Oaks because I can't give you my car today. I've got to go to Pasadena. So they're in Ripley's car. They go to the dog park, which is only 3 miles from our house with the dogs. And I'm in Pasadena, and I get this text from Wills. I found marijuana in Ripley's car. Please come home. I'm frightened.
Oh, bless his heart.
And of course, I didn't think for a second that it wasn't marijuana. I knew it was marijuana. And I was like, called my husband. What are you doing? I'm in the room at The Simpsons. I'm running the room. I'm like, come home. He's like, I can't come home. I'm like, okay, this is not a question, or I'm not asking you to come.
Right.
Get your butt home. I need help with this.
Right.
So I'm driving home, and I'm like, okay, so how am I going to deal with this? I said, have Ripley bring you home. I'm on my way. And I know Ripley. I know him. I know he wouldn't have that in the car.
But it doesn't matter when it's your kid. You can't.
Right.
You're not allowed to have questions when it's your kid.
No. And I called. Luckily, on the way home, I got in terrible traffic on the 101 coming from Pasadena, and I called Will's therapist, who was on a sailboat. I don't even know where. She didn't tell me where, but she picked up her cell phone, which I couldn't believe it. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, this happened. And so she said, listen, calm down. Here's what you're going to do. And without her, it would have been a very bad situation. You go home. You and Michael say to Ripley, can we talk to you alone? And you take Ripley someplace else in the house, and you sit down with Ripley and you say, look, this is what Wills saw.
Right.
Can you tell us what that's about? Find out. You love Ripley. You know him. What this is about. Give him a chance.
Yeah.
I was not going to give this beautiful child, who is like my own child, a chance. I was ready to tie. Well, it turns out what he found was a case that a cigar comes in. And it looks like, a long tube. It wasn't marijuana, and there were cigar leaves. And Ripley was so happy to show us and tell us. But what was amazing to me, so Will's therapist is telling us all the things that she wishes Ripley would know and say, that we were to inform Ripley. Well, Ripley says those himself. He said, I want Wills to feel, if he gets frightened around me, if he thinks he's seen something, I want him to feel like he can say, Ripley, you're scaring me and freaking me out. Why does this marijuana? So that in the moment I can say, what are you talking about? And he said, it wouldn't be marijuana, but let's say if it were, I would say, Wills, this is what it is. Let's talk to your mom and dad. I'm never going to have a secret from your parents or you. And everything that he's so much, and literally Michael and I both said, just thank God who this child is, and that we had the therapist to calm us way down. And so we brought Wills into the room, and he was crying, and he said, I'm disappointed in you, Ripley. And Ripley said, I can imagine.
Yeah.
He didn't shame him or say, hey, I didn't do anything. He's 21. He's not he's not an old person. He's not a young, he has a maturity about him. And he said, I would be disappointed too, Wills. I understand. But he said, what you found actually wasn't marijuana. And let's go out to the car. I'm going to show you. You show us what you found.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
So we all went out to the car. So, and then we had this great talk about, because Wills is going into his sophomore year of a mainstream high school. Even though he's in the Spectrum program there, he's going to start encountering some of this stuff. So then we had this hour and 15-minute conversation about what Ripley saw his sophomore and junior years, and what Wills might see. And then how he might handle that situation if that comes up.
What a great thing.
And not to be frightened of what he knows.
Right. It's empowerment.
It's unbelievable.
For Wills, but for you and for your husband as well.
Well, and then, there was the issue of Will said, well, Mommy, you never did that. And I was like, I might have done that in college.
There was a pause in the conversation.
Yes. Well, no, I said, I did try that. I have done that before. But I said that was years ago. But even so, I'll just tell you, I did try it. And he was really disappointed and sad. Yeah. But I said, I wasn't going to lie to him and say, well, I never did that. Nobody does that,
Right.
So I told him. And that's exactly what his therapist said. You just need to be honest with him, but let him know, and I said, it's not something that you can do while you drive. It's not something I want you to do.
Right.
Right.
Wow. Powerful.
It was hard.
But how lovely that you have Ripley in your life.
Yes. But even talking about it here, I'm wondering, should I have told him I did it? I don't know. I'd be interested in what your viewers thought.
And I think it really is child specific.
Yeah.
There are some children that I don't think necessarily can handle a truth because they'll obsess on it.
Well, he said, how old were you? And I said, I was 24. And he said, okay, no, you don't do that now. And I said, oh, no,
Yeah.
which of course, no.
Yeah. But I think the relationship that you have with Will's, I'm a big fan of a parent's intuition. And I think...
I wasn't sure.
And I think, but you know, in the moment, something said to you, it's most important that I be honest with him. And he's 16, and he trusts you.
Right.
And trust is a big issue with him.
He's really mad at me right now over it.
Well...
And I understand. And I said, you know, it's not legal. I certainly made, you know, I would say it was a mistake now. And, but that happened.
But, you know, one of the things that Jem has a heightened awareness of justice. He's always about justice. And there are times when I've had to say something to him and then he's been mad at me, that later on, I've been able to say to him when I'm mad at him, because he fears me being mad at him. He fears making a mistake.
Yes.
And I'm all the time saying to him, hey, does Mom make mistakes sometimes? And he says, yes. And I say, and do you get mad at me when I make a mistake? Yes. But do you stop loving me? Do you give up on me? He says, well,
are you
of course
disappointed
not.
in me?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Right. But you don't give up on me. You don't stop loving me. And it's a way for me to language later on when he's afraid of admitting to me that he's made a mistake.
Right.
And I'm always telling Jem, I expect you to make mistakes, because brilliant people never get anywhere or accomplish anything unless they make mistakes.
Right.
So I expect you to make mistakes, and I'll stand by you. Admit it when you make a mistake and learn from it. Don't try to hide it, because I think kids hiding mistakes is the worst. That's what I fear.
Oh my gosh.
That he'll try to hide something and that I won't know a mistake that he's made.
Right.
I have a very good friend that had that happen with a child in her family, that the kid made a mistake, and he knew he made a mistake. He set off some fireworks in the basement of his house, and he knew it was a mistake in that moment, as you sometimes,
Sure.
you know, you have that quick grow up moment, and he didn't want his mom to know because he was going to be in trouble, so he covered it with his hands.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
And the thing that everybody cried about so hard was that, you know, because he lost several fingers forever, and the mother said, don't you know? I know, please. And Jem and I have talked about that very story, because the mom said to him, don't you know that even if you had blown up the basement, I would have still loved you.
Right.
That you don't ever have to hide a mistake from me. So I'm always saying that to Jem.
Yeah, that's...
You know, there's nothing worse than you know, not telling me what's going on. Because together we can figure it out, and I'm always going to love you, even if I'm mad, even if I'm disappointed.
Right, right.
So I think that you being honest with Wills is huge and important.
I'm not sure.
You know,
Sitting here, it doesn't feel like I did the right thing. But by telling him that, although, I mean, I feel like Ripley handled it great. I feel like now I need to go back with him. You know, he has therapy this afternoon, and maybe I think what I'll do is go in and sit with them, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But that breaks my heart about that child with the fireworks, and I know Wills is always afraid of somebody being disappointed in him.
Yeah.
I think we all are. I am.
Yeah.
I don't want people to be disappointed.
But you can, you know, if you feel like you can today, to say, this feels terrible that you're disappointed in me.
Yeah, but I'm also going to say, I'm not sure I should have told you this, and then have his therapist help us through it.
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
I think, because I'm sitting here, it doesn't feel right.
Well, but a lot of times, you know, I can't sort out uncomfortable between, because I don't like to be uncomfortable. I don't ever want to be uncomfortable. I'll go to great lengths, cross the street and carry something heavy on my back to not be uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
But sometimes being uncomfortable is the space we just have to be in.
This is my 50th year. This is the hardest thing, you know. I mentioned here that my husband and I had separated at some point, you know, almost 4 years ago now, 3 years ago, and one thing that was the hardest thing about that whole thing, besides Will's, was the saddest and hardest part of that, but I had to sit in my sadness and shock and anger and pick through my marriage and what had happened what both of us had done. But I had to be uncomfortable for a really long time. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, this is sort of cliche, but things have to burn completely to the ground, and then you can see. And I don't want that to happen, of course. You don't want things to burn to the ground, and hopefully they won't. But this uncomfortable feeling has brought about such grace for me, which is it's such a shock to me, even at my age. I just, and that's how I felt I've always felt, I think about Will's, how frightened I'm going to speak for myself. I'm sure most of us, when Will's was diagnosed, I was so frightened. What's this mean? What's his future going to be? I don't know about you guys, but a lot of my friends are taking their kids to college for the first time. So on Facebook, and my Facebook is a mess. I was just saying, my publicist is working my Facebook right now at home. But I saw that in the news feed I could get, that part, they said that they were moving their children into dorms. And I was so proud of my friends from high school and saying to them, look what you did, that's amazing. But inside I was wondering, wow, I wonder what that feels like. And I don't think I'm probably going to know that, but I'm going to know something else. And so I think the sitting in the not knowing, in the uncomfortable place of not knowing, or just, to be uncomfortable is hard.
But you are not sure that you're going to move Will's into a dorm at some point?
I feel like Will's will go his way. I feel like, and it's an amazing feeling, and I'm not underestimating it at all, that I do feel like, and this is my kind of feeling now that I brought Ripley up constantly and that he smoked a cigar, that he's going to be starting graduate school about the same time. He's going to take a few years off when he graduates next spring, and then he's going to go to graduate school. And my dearest hope is that we can get him to go to they can go to the same school, and Ripley can from afar shadow Will's without Will's actually really knowing that that's what's going on. You know that more and more colleges, though, are starting programs where they have support. You told me that. Yes. And I'm so excited about that. It's been my, I believe in having a visual, for me, is a very powerful thing because I'm a visual person. So from like the third day that Jem was diagnosed, I have imagined, now in my head it's a mess because I imagine him standing there in a cap and gown graduating from high school, but it's the same day we take him to college and he's still in the cap and gown, which that's messy. Nobody ever goes off to college in their cap and gown from high school. Oh, you never know. But, probably now he'll wear it just to be like, see, the vision is true. But I constantly, that's my end game, that I visualize him being at college. Now, I still visualize me in the apartment around the corner. That's neither here nor there. Are you in the room next to him like I am? That's neither here nor there. I'm around the corner. I'm working at the pizza place in the main square. Yes, exactly. That all works. But that is what I visualize. That we're standing there, and he's graduated from high school, and he's going off to college. And that, and then I'm able to say to him that in my part of it, I'm able to say we did everything that we possibly could with no guilt, no shame. That we didn't leave any stone unturned. That we did, that we made choices and did as much as we could. Because obviously you can't do everything. Right. But that we did everything that we could and that made sense and that was sensible, that we, showed up. We suited up and showed up for him. So, but that's what I visualize. But I so visualize Will's going and being in a dorm. So we'll see. I would think that's amazing. And then if he could do the bathroom where everyone takes the showers and stuff, it'll be like the greatest step of all time. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of dorms... Because I had trouble with that. I had trouble with that, too. A lot of times dorms now have suites. See, I'm an old lady. I haven't been in a dorm in a million years. It's a lot different than it used to be. I mean, I used to teach college, and even when I taught college, which has been a number of years now, it's been over 10 years since I was teaching college, but sometimes I'll go and do a summer program. The dorms are vastly different now. Oh, okay. Vastly different. Because I was in a co-ed dorm, and the bathrooms were shared. Oh, yeah. I had to walk down the hallway quite a ways to get to the bathroom, and I didn't care for that. I moved off campus as quickly as I could because that was horrible. Yes. Felt like a prison camp to me. Who would want to do that? Privacy, please. Yeah. What are you going to do? But, they're vastly different now. Sometimes they have suites where, there'll be 4 rooms and a bathroom for 4 people to share, like an apartment. Right. Actually, at Sarah Lawrence, they have that. I noticed that the really old dorms have that, too. Yeah. So there are programs just for kids who are on the spectrum that sort of tailor to what do they need to have, and sometimes, so there are things like that coming. I need to be researching right now, clearly. That's wonderful. It's very exciting, some different things that are out there. In any case, we're going to take a break and come back and get an update from Monica about what's happening about being a juror and having to face down a judge who had some really nasty things to say about autism and some of how that affected me this last week. So stick with us. More after these messages.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Oh, share that picture Yeah.
We've added statement. Have you seen that one?
No,
oh,
no.
Okay. So I say a statement, and he has to say a similar statement to what I said. So what we're targeting right now is I have an icy. So I would say, I have a pen, and he would say, I have an iPod. And then we would just go back and forth. And with this one, we're targeting him while we're playing with something, just to make it more natural. So when they're doing play or anything like that, his peer would say something, and he can say the same thing. So let me set that up for you. I'm laying on the floor.
I'm playing.
I see a girl.
Going down the steps.
She's going downstairs.
And there's Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, he's dragging behind.
I see Tigger.
Good job, Jack Riley.
Besides working on statement, Jack Riley is also learning sequencing. What he has to do is take images and put them in order. A few weeks ago, he started with 2 steps, and today he's working with 3 steps. What he has to do besides putting the images in order is he has to describe what's happening using words like first, then, and finally.
First, then, finally.
Yeah, by yourself.
We're going to use 3 boxes.
First, he
We're
builds.
going to use 3 steps. First, he makes a big, smaller tower. Then he makes a big tower. Then he makes a... No, let's try again. Finally, the pieces fall off on the table.
You go. Okay, very good. Say, don't do that, Lainey. Say, let go. There you go. Get these in your words.
He's standing.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In the studio with us right now is Monica Holloway, critically acclaimed author of Cowboy and Wills. Just you are such a beautiful writer.
Oh, thank you.
I can't say that enough. You have a way with words, both spoken and in print. It's fabulous. And I really have been learning so much from you. You shared a couple of weeks ago that you went to jury duty and had a really terrible time.
Yes.
That the judge really made some very offensive remarks. If people happen to miss it, give us the real Reader's Digest, because we want them to go back and watch the clip of what you said the first time, because it was powerful.
Right. I got called into jury duty, and I asked if I could move it back because Wills was starting a mainstream school and a special program, and they wanted me to come in on his lunch hour and work with him, and then also he was going to have special therapy. Oops, that's my glasses. At the end of the day, and so. But I couldn't get out of it, so I went. And when it came time to all of us went in. I'm not saying this very succinctly at all. Quickly, we went in, and then they said it was going to be 4 to 6 week. It could be a 4 to 6 week trial, which was I couldn't do it with Will starting a mainstream school, and also the fact that he needed to be there.
I think almost any autism parent understands that you have constraints. You have times that you have to show up. There's things that you have to do, and you said about explaining that to the judge and saying,
right,
here's why I'm not a good candidate for this. I
offered to come back later. I said, I can come back. I'm happy to do my jury duty. 4 weeks would be hard anytime, but it's not. It's impossible right now, and this is why. And I said, I have a child with special needs. And before I could explain the autism, he said, well, I will tell you that everyone in here thinks they have special kids. So, my grandkids are special too. And so we got into a big brouhaha. And actually, I had a lawyer friend who watched the clip say to me last week, she said, I would have thrown you out. I would have held you in contempt.
Really?
You can't talk to a judge like that.
But a judge can't talk to you that way either.
I feel like in his words, I don't care.
Yeah, that's what he said. When Monica said,
my child has autism,
and he responded with, I don't care.
I don't care.
Right.
I don't care.
Right. Which I just, I can feel my blood pressure going up thinking, well, let's make sure you do care.
Right.
How about we do that?
Right.
Because you really should. If you're going to be a sitting judge,
my goodness,
you need to care and not be that way about that. Let's make sure you care.
Not only did he not know about autism, as far as I could tell, he honestly was annoyed. He was annoyed by it, by my bringing it up, as if it were bothersome to him somehow.
Yeah, he thought you were just using an excuse. And I've certainly run up against this in life, that people go, look, lady, you're just wanting to get something that you're not entitled to, and nobody feels bad for you.
Right. That's what it was. And anybody that knows me knows, and you were talking about Jem this way too, about like justice.
Yeah.
It's like when it's very clearly unfair, I become completely succinct and I go into this sort of mode of like, I know what to say, and sometimes how to say it. But I'm not very good at pulling back.
Well, but I think that's a powerful thing. And that's why we're glad you're on our team. Yeah, absolutely. So in any case, you have filed a complaint. And when you were back the last time, we had many viewers who wrote in and said, get a petition on change.org. We'll sign it to get this guy ousted.
Right.
But you have an update for us about why that's
and
not
I said I would do that. And I talked to my legal team who said, please don't start a petition until we get all of our paperwork through. But what we did do, and Jess, my publicist, and I are working on it now, is we're working on 2 articles to put in the newspaper, and I hope I can get really good coverage on it. We're hoping for the LA Times at least. We have 2 papers that already said they would. One is an Australia paper.
Nice.
As a paper in Australia, I mean. And so we have 2 places that we know it's going to be in, and I think it'll catch fire. My hope is that we can make a big enough stink about it that we can get on local radio shows, local television shows, and then hopefully somebody national will pick it up.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of go about it this way. As soon as I figure out sort of, and they know what legally we've done, and that's in place, then I can do whatever I want with the petition. I can do, I just can't do it yet.
Right. There's a time and a place and a sequence of events to these kinds of things.
But I'm not going to let it go. There's no way we're just going to set this aside. This isn't going to happen. So as soon as the articles are out, I'll let you guys know here. It'll be within the next month and a half for sure, because they're pretty much finished, and they link to your video.
Cool.
So your video link is in the article.
Very cool, because you were so eloquent about that. And I said, I've really been thinking about it and thinking about how I need to step up a little bit more, that there have been times in my life that I feel like I have said something autism-wise. And in the last few years, I've gotten, I don't know, I guess I'm cutting people too much slack, is I think what I'm doing. And this has happened a couple of times where people have just been idiots, and I've let it go. The first big time that it happened was when his first Christmas concert for kindergarten, my mother had been coaching him the night before and saying, because he was whispering his little songs, my mother was saying, you gotta sing out, you gotta really sing it out, right? So they got into, and they were doing the concert, and he was just, muttering the words, and they got to, in the 12 Days of Christmas, they got to 5 golden rings, and he heard everybody else singing that one really loud, and it reminded him of what Grandma had said.
Right.
So he started to scream sing everything else for the last 3 songs, and just was scream singing, right? Well, at first people laughed, right? There was that nervous sort of titter, and then they all started to laugh. They found it hysterical, and I was in the back of the room videotaping. My husband was in the front of the room videotaping, and on the tape that we have, a guy goes, "What a jerk," right, about my kid.
No,
and my mother heard this and wanted to take him apart, and I said, you know what? Don't. He's just a dad. He doesn't know. His kid was there. Jem was taking the focus of all the kids' thing. Let it go. Let it go. And I said, because here's the thing. He thought that Jem was being a jerk. Jem passed for being a jerk. It didn't occur to him that Jem had something going on. And I said, in a way, it's kind of a compliment. Like, he didn't sit there and go, oh, that kid has problems.
Right.
He passed for being a jerk.
Right.
And we had a little laugh about it. My son passed for being a jerk. So that's been kind of my take on it from time to time, where I've been like,
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Except it was an opportunity to educate that man, right?
It was, except that you were at this concert. It was Jem's moment. It was, I don't...
in the moment, that's how I decided.
I gotta say,
that's how I decided to take it. My son passed. I think I even wrote a blog about it. My son passed for being a jerk. Woo-hoo! We're winning this game, right? And but you really made me think about it some more. And then we were someplace the other day with my son and a friend of his, and the friend is very neurotypical. They're both going to the 5th grade. It's on Wednesday. Somebody wrote in and said, "How was the first day?" It's not till Wednesday. Don't rush me. But anyway, we were someplace, and we were, at a place where kids could touch and feel things and so on and so forth. And then we went into the gift shop. And even in the gift shop, they had things set up that were, for you to try, display. And there were a lot of really cool little kid toys. And so both my son and his friends started to play with some of the little kid toys. And the woman in the gift shop turned and looked at my son and said, how old are you?
Oh, no.
Yes.
No.
And I felt myself wanting to go there, and instead I said, oh, thank you, he's really enjoying the toy. And she was like, yeah, but, and then she was kind of talking with her other partners. And then the other little boy, who's neurotypical, went and got one of those toys that you push, that it's got the little duck feet, and she looked again and looked at him and said, again, I asked the question, how old are you? And she gave me this look like, what kind of parenting are you doing? And I mean, it was really like...
She's like the shame clerk.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Really. And then I went, okay, if Monica were here...
Oh, no, you don't...
Monica would not let this go because... And I thought about it, and I thought, because if I do her saying nothing, she's going to continue to do this.
Right, to other children, yes.
And it's not okay. It really isn't okay. And I know she doesn't mean anything by it. I know she doesn't get it, but somebody needs to educate her. I didn't want to do it in front of my son because his friend was there.
Yes.
And I know he would have been furious with me. But I did they were playing for a second one, and I took somebody else aside and that I knew was a superior to this woman, and I said, okay, look. And I knew that this person knew what our situation was. And I said, I need to talk to you because something just happened. And she said, oh gosh, I sort of walked in and I sort of saw the tail end of it. Tell me. And I said, okay, this is what she said, and this is why she can't say that. And this is what you need to say to her. She can't automatically know, and that it's really inappropriate. And she didn't offend me because, once again, my child passed for just being, too exuberant, and that she was making fun of him, and he took it fine. He wasn't offended. His friend wasn't offended, but somebody else coming in is going to be offended, and it's not okay.
See, you handled that beautifully.
I don't know.
Oh, that's much better than just like, hey, listen to me. Because they're not going to learn when you're yelling at them. You did a beautiful job.
And I said to the person, I don't want her to be in trouble for it because it's just something she doesn't know, but I can't leave here thinking that she's going to keep doing this.
Oh, good
She needs to know.
Shannon,
but I did that because of you.
Oh,
because
I'm
otherwise
glad.
I just would have left and said, oh, well, she's just ignorant, and ignorance is ignorance, right? But ignorance is pervasive unless we say, stop it.
It is. And I think there's you hit the happy medium between me going off in some crazy rage or not saying anything. And I think that's a beautiful example.
Wow.
A beautiful example.
Thank you. But it was because of you. So I have you to thank for it.
I am moved and inspired by that. And that'll help me, too, to sort of calm myself down. Now, if somebody listens to me and says, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, or I don't get it, but okay, that's one thing. But I will say that the judge he was so belligerent.
Yeah, there was none of that with him.
Well, no, and I could not stop trying to get him to understand.
Right.
I would have done I would have driven a motorcycle through anything, just like, understand me. It's, how hard is it to understand? And he never did. And that is the worst thing you can do to me. It's like,
yeah, I think
even if you say, I don't understand, but I get that you're upset, I'm okay with that. But I just think that's a beautiful, mature, intelligent way to handle that situation. Wow. You did great.
And I'm just realizing how long we've kept you, but we have a question from a viewer who wants to know, what do you do for wills for fire drills?
In the house or at home?
I would assume both. Yes. Sometimes there's a loud noise at school with a fire drill, and at home.
With the fire drill noise. That's really interesting. There was, Wills goes to school in Santa Monica, and there was a shooting at Santa Monica College at the end of the year, right? Yeah. And it was really scary. I mean, after everything that happened in Connecticut, I know we've talked about that with the children in Connecticut, and we talked about the autism and all of that around that too, and also how Wills went out to talk to other to elementary schools and high schools and junior highs about being autistic and how it's not a violent thing to be, but how sad that this happened in Connecticut. So he was very aware that this guy busted into a school, and so I think all the schools, probably all across the nation, but certainly his school, they were doing drills where they got under their desks, they locked the door. What do you do on lockdown?
Right.
And it turns out that there's a loud a really loud sound when they go on lockdown. So when this happened, it happened to be the day President Obama was in town.
Yeah.
And so all the kids, so Will's school is on Olympic Boulevard in Santa Monica, and the motorcade was coming right down Olympic Boulevard. So Will's had this amazing day where he went out, and I hope I didn't say this already on the show, but he went out with his classmates, and President Obama went by and put his window down and waved at the kids.
Cool.
So Will's is filming, and you can hear Will say, "That's President Obama, all right." And so that exact same day, they go back in.
Wow.
So they know the president is in town, and this loud noise goes off.
Oh, dear.
Now, when this happens to Will's now, again, Will's is 6'3", and he's a big guy, like a gentle giant.
Yeah.
He gets calm when these noises go off now, and I don't exactly know when it flipped. It didn't. It wasn't really gradual that I recall. I just remember being like, he wasn't like when I would go oh and start laughing. He wouldn't put his hands over his ears anymore. He stopped wearing his earplugs. I kept finding them in his pockets, and I'm like, Wills, are you wearing your earplugs? I don't want those anymore. I said, well, let's just keep them in just in case. So every day I put the earplugs in the pockets. They would come home, or one would be lost. It kind of started like that. He used to wear ear cuffs, like rifle range ear cuffs. But now, he said, when the big sound goes off, he knows to get very still. So he just gets still. He goes, I get still and I listen. Because they say, this is a lockdown, and this is what we're doing. Or this is a fire drill, and we're going outside. And he said, if everyone's talking and screaming or freaking out, I can't listen.
Wow.
So he doesn't want the noise, but it doesn't make him run or freak out.
That's amazing. What a great thing to teach all of our kids, that I hear the loud noise and I get still and listen. That's a great thing.
Get still and listen.
I'm going to make sure that my son knows that.
He used to say, when we would hear loud noises too, he would say, I'm waiting for the all clear. And that was our thing that we would say, like, as the minute I heard something go off, I'd say, we're waiting for the all clear, aren't we, Wills? We're waiting for the all clear. And I actually forgot about it till right now. That I must have said that 1,000,000 times when he was little. We're waiting for the all clear.
But that's so hopeful, that there is going to be an all clear, and it gives you something to do in the moment other than just panic.
Right.
When we have things to do, when we have an order of things of, okay, this happens, it's not completely out of the blue. It's why we do fire drills, so that we know what to do.
It's true, and one thing that Will's therapist said that might be helpful to your viewer, is that she said if Will's would run or freak out still, but when he was littler, we were trying to deal with the fire drill situation. She said just make sure that he always had something in his pocket that he could pull out and focus on.
Okay.
So he had this little beanie bag. Remember the beanie babies? It was a hamster. He had 1,000,000 hamsters when he was little. Not 1,000,000, but he had 5. Too many hamsters. And he named it False Alarm.
Oh.
Because when the alarm would go off at school, it's probably a false alarm.
Right.
We're waiting for the all clear.
And he would
So he carried that little, well, it would be anything. It would be like a loud singing in the auditorium. It would be like somebody slamming something down on a desk. He would pull it out. Look at false alarm. It's just a false alarm.
Okay.
So something like a fidget toy or something to have, even something small, a little rock shaped like a heart that they wouldn't eat, hopefully, or something like that, to just in your pocket, just, okay, I'm focusing on that. When I was an actress and I would be nervous on stage, I had this great vocal person, coach named Peggy Loft, who's amazing. Actually, she's at Juilliard, but she would say, look at your fingernail, Monica, and just breathe and focus on that fingernail, and you're going to see your breath's going to drop down and you're going to get very still.
Wow.
Which is exactly what they were teaching Wills when he would take false alarm, the hamster pellet baby out of his pocket. And it helped him a lot.
But it gives you something to focus on.
Yes.
Amazing.
Now, the only problem with that is if he would set it down somewhere, he would get anxious without it. So it's a hard thing.
Hard thing. But definitely a proactive thing to do. Fantastic. Well, I thank you so much for being here and being with us. Come. And we're really late. We've gone on and we didn't, did we show the A word, Emily? I've completely lost track. We did. I've completely lost track of time. We're going to take a break in any case. We're going to say goodbye to Monica. We're coming back. We've got 2 stories in the news that I want to talk about that are really important. And we're also going to share some ABA tips for safety to kind of go hand in hand with some of the things that we've talked about. So stick with us. More after these messages. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some guesses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana. We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. We had a couple of stories. I want to cover the first one of them in the news. You may have heard about this late last week. Kaiser Permanente has agreed to pay a $9 million settlement for autism therapy suit. It was a class action suit that alleged that the health plan illegally refused to provide behavior therapy for autistic children before, here's the important part of this, before was mandated by state law. The lawsuit was filed in Southern California in April of 2009 on behalf of a young boy named Andrew Ark of Los Angeles and others like him. Andrew was 2 years old, and Kaiser denied coverage for applied behavior analysis, even though its own doctors said it was medically necessary. Now, we talk on this show all the time about why ABA wasn't covered for so long by insurance and why more and more insurance providers are starting to cover it. And just to give you a little bit of backstory, if you haven't been watching, that insurance companies aren't responsible to give you access to therapies that are considered experimental. And if there is some sort of condition that does not have any therapy that is shown to in any way significantly make it better, they're not responsible for providing that therapy. And for a lot of years, insurance companies used that as their example for why they weren't going to cover ABA. Now, for kids with autism. And we know that in 1987, Lovaas first published the Young Autism Project that showed for the first time that autism was effective in creating progress with kids on the autism spectrum. But one study doesn't get it done. And it was really difficult, and it took a lot of years before there were two more studies that were published, I think in 2004 and 2005, that showed that they could replicate results like Lovaas's. And in the period of time since 2002 to now, there have been over 100 studies that have shown that ABA is very effective. This is why you're seeing the difference happening now, not in 1987. It was really important for me as a parent to go, oh, okay, lights on, that's what's happening. Enough studies have been done that insurance companies can no longer make an effective case saying there is no effective treatment for autism, so that's why we don't have to pay for it. Which is why you're seeing that even when there isn't a state mandate saying that they have to pay for it, that there are several insurance companies now that have said, we're going to pay for it. We're just going to pay for it. And it's one of the reasons why I've said to you, don't assume if you're in a state that doesn't get it, that that you haven't gotten the insurance mandate, that your insurance company isn't going to pay for it. Because insurance companies, and this is going to go a long way, I believe, to making sure that look, when people see $9 million, they go, okay, something's going on here. And this is a suit that they've settled for $9 million, so it didn't go to trial. And it was for events that happened before there was a state mandate. So, the article that I'm quoting here, we need to make sure that we give its proper due. It's Kathy Robertson, and this is from the Sacramento Business Journal. But in any case, this settlement, it was announced internally at Kaiser on July 30th, they've established, as part of the agreement, a fund up to $9 million to reimburse any of the class members who incurred out-of-pocket expenses for applied behavior analysis or speech therapy before the enactment of the Senate Bill 946, which made it so that they had to pay for it. So here's the rub here. I can remember when my son was diagnosed, we had two insurance companies, and one of them was Kaiser. And we were actually diagnosed by a Kaiser Permanente doctor, and that was the person who said to us, oh, don't do the ABA, right? Now, I'm sure that apparently there are other doctors who said, oh, you're going to want to get ABA. And those parents went and paid out of pocket. And only those parents are going to get money back from this $9 million settlement. Here's the difficulty. What about those families that said, oh, it's not covered, I don't have a way of paying out of pocket, so their child didn't get the progress? They are not included in this lawsuit, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was another lawsuit to piggyback to go with that. Parents who said, we didn't get the treatment because you didn't pay for it. And the door certainly is left open for that. The quote that was given by Kaiser, their official statement was, this case involved issues around coverage for services before the law changed. And this settlement does not determine that Kaiser Permanente acted inappropriately. They further went on to say, we believe this settlement is in the best interest of everyone involved. It absolutely is. I agree with them that, but it'll be interesting to see what happens as a result, because if that doesn't put fear into some of the other insurance providers, it should. It should. And for those of you who still do not have a coverage, whether you're in a state that is mandated for everything that is outside of ERISA, if you are in a self-funded plan, you're still not covered. Those insurance companies, I hope, are starting to shake a little bit in their shoes, because they can't hide forever. They can't exclude this. It's been scientifically proven to be effective. So we're thrilled if you are someone who paid out of pocket from, I believe the dates are from 2005 on. I'm looking here to see. I think it was in one of the other articles that I didn't print. You'll have to check and see. But you should have, if you paid out of pocket, you should have gotten a notice in the last couple of weeks saying that you're part of a class action suit, and make sure you fill that paperwork out. Because if all $9 million aren't claimed, there is a plan for the leftover money that some of it will go to fund autism research, which is great. I don't know what the rest of it, because the article doesn't tell us. But I would encourage you to check your mail, see if you're included. If you got Kaiser Permanente services and you did pay out of pocket, that's an important part of this. You had to have paid out of pocket. Then it is very likely that you will see a return on some of that investment that you made in your child. And you'll want to look into that further. But good news, I think, for all of us. Kaiser's a big player in the game, and they decided it was worthwhile for them not to go to court and to pay $9 million. That's a woohoo moment. We're going to take a break and come back to tell you another story in the news. Stick with us.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
An interesting news story that just started breaking over the weekend. There is a gentleman by the name of Darius McCullum who apparently has an obsession with transportation, lives in the New York area, and of course there's a lot of transit systems that happen. And since the age of 4, he has been obsessed with the subway trains, the bus routes, and all the different ways that people get from one place to another in New York City. Now, he's been arrested 29 times because part of this obsession and this compulsion with him and transportation has included him masquerading as transit authority and hijacking buses, just getting on them and pretending to be the bus driver. It's my understanding that no one has been hurt in these different events that he has participated in, but of course it's very illegal, and there's always the chance that someone who is not trained could cause damage. But they've arrested him 29 times for these different things. And what I appreciate about this story is that we're starting to look a little bit outside the box, because someone at some point took a look at this young man and said, there's something else going on here, and what we're doing isn't working. Don't we talk about that all the time as autism parents, that we have to look at behavior and go, there's something going on, and are we actually trying to stop it? Are we just trying to police it? What are we trying to do? Well, this young man just recently went before a judge again, and the estimation was that he was going, and he's been in prison several times, right? He's 49 years old. I count that as young. But he's spent nearly a third of his life behind bars, and then when he gets out, he's back doing these same kinds of things. But recently, his most recent time going in jail in 2010 because he stole a Trailways bus. He was arrested behind the wheel on the highway that leads to the Kennedy International Airport. But he got a good attorney, and the attorney made a plea to the judge because this young man, again, 49, young to me. He was honest about what was going on, and he does have a diagnosis of Asperger's, and it was looked at to see, okay, are we really being effective here in stopping the behavior that has happened? And the judge decided that no, putting him in jail for 15 years and leaving him there and throwing away the key was not going to be effective at changing the behavior. And so he has been sentenced to 2 to 3 years of cognitive behavioral therapy, something that we were talking about a little bit earlier on in the show. And it was a Manhattan judge who said that she looked up the disorder online and decided that this was going to be something that was more appropriate and going to help all of society in a better way. What a shift from the judge that we were just talking about with Monica Holloway, who was saying, you know, when she said, look, my child has autism, and he said, I don't care. So really props to this Manhattan judge. I don't have a name for the judge, but I think this is amazing, an amazing turn of events, that we're starting to look at behavior and say, let's do what's effective. And that isn't necessarily imprisonment. They're not saying it's okay that this man was hijacking buses and taking them over and pretending to be, different Port Authority officials. But how wonderful that he's going to get the help that he actually needs and perhaps be a more productive member of society. And he's been doing this for a while. At 15, they report that he piloted an E-train from 34th Street, his favorite subway station, 6 stops to the World Trade Center without any passengers noticing. And that it is an ongoing cycle in his life, and it's been well documented. So in any case, I'm thrilled that he's going to get help. And I'm thrilled that we have a judge who is looking at his circumstances and seeing people and behavior and the fact that there are effective strategies that can be put in place to change the behavior. Absolutely love it. All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some ABA strategies for keeping our kids safe. Stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? Well, what Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job! Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you could do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So today we've been talking about safety and how important it is that we give our kids the tools and the ability and the knowledge to be as safe as they possibly can. And then we're going to be vigilant to help to make sure that they're participating in those rules and that we're there to intercede when they're not, right? And that's going to help us to be less stressed. So if we talk about safety through an ABA perspective, that we're looking at engaging in safe behavior as behavior, because guess what it is? And rule number one, in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing. So a lot of times we think that I'm just going to teach my child, and I'm going to teach, and I'm going to teach, and I'm going to teach. And we had Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in here on Friday. He's the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And he said, by the way, the traditional mode that we teach children where they're all in a classroom together and we talk about something isn't shown to be the most effective way of teaching safety. That what's shown to be effective is giving as many opportunities and giving feedback, making it reinforcing as possible. So when we're looking at things from an ABA standpoint, we want to make sure that we're not going to focus, especially if a child is young or doesn't have a lot of language, we're not going to focus on having them understand all of the rules necessarily. That'll be later on maybe. But in the beginning, we want to make the behavior reinforcing. Later on, I definitely think it helps our kids to understand why we're doing this. But that's for older kids and for kids who are higher functioning. For the child who doesn't have very much expressive or receptive language saying, this is the reason why we have fire drills, you might as well be going womp 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 womp. And we're not going to wait until they're 10 or 13 to explain to them why we want you to engage in this behavior. We need to get the behavior on board as early as possible. So we set up circumstances where we can give those multiple teaching opportunities, and we make sure that we have meaningful reinforcement. What do I mean by meaningful reinforcement? What I like isn't necessarily what you like, and what's going to get me motivated to do something isn't necessarily going to be what gets you motivated to do something. Our kids are the same way. So you might think to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to offer this reward because I think this is what they'll enjoy. Okay, great. That's a great starting point. But if they don't actually do it, then it wasn't reinforcing enough. It wasn't rewarding enough, and you either got to up the stakes and give more of whatever it was, or you got to find something that's a bigger deal. And I'll tell you what, this is the parenting game, constantly trying to figure out what's going to make this reinforcing enough. I know a lot of parents shy away from that because they go, I want them to do the behavior without a reward. That comes later on. But you first got to build it up and make sure that it's reinforcing. Okay, so pick the behavior that you want. Is it that you want the child to look both ways? Is it that you want the child not to talk to strangers? Is it that you want the child to tell you before they leave the immediate area where you are? And you might say, well, gosh, I want all of those things. Okay, but we're not going to try to work on all of them in the same exact moment. You can work on all of them every day. absolutely, and multiple times every day, each one of them, but we're not going to try to teach everything in one moment, right? We don't do that with anything. You don't go to math class and have you work on grammar at the same time they're trying to teach you fractions. They just don't. It wouldn't be productive. So same thing. So if you're saying to yourself, okay, well, today I want to make sure that I work on crossing the street, because if Dr. Tarbuck says that opportunity is the most important, then I'm going to work on this 4 different times. It's Monday and I'm going to work on it 4 different times. I also want to work on knowing what to do if the fire alarm goes off. And I'm going to work on that once or twice today. You're going to, kind of meter it out and go, these are the things I'm going to work on. But in any given moment, make sure that you're clear what the thing is that you're working on in that moment. So if you say to yourself, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a circumstance where we're going to work on crossing the street. Depending on how old your child is, if your child is old enough that they can read, you might have a visual schedule that includes text. If your child can't read, if your child has very little receptive language, you might start out with a visual schedule, and you've got a piece of paper there and it shows a picture. We used to love taking our digital camera and setting up the photo shoots for these things, by the way. That we would go downstairs and we would have multiple people there, maybe a therapist, my husband and I'd be taking the pictures of my husband standing on the sidewalk with my son and them looking one way, and I'd take a picture. This was a part of the beginning part of the lesson because we were making a big deal about it. My son loved having his picture taken. If your child doesn't love having their picture taken, have one of the neighborhood kids do it. That's really reinforcing for your child. If they love to play with Billy down the street, have Billy be the child in the pictures. Look, this is how Billy is safe. We want to be like Billy, right? So that you show, maybe the going to the curb and looking one way. You show a picture of them looking the other way and waiting as a car goes by and waiting until it's time to go and successfully crossing the street, and then finally have a picture of something at the end. And it might be, candy, or it might be a mom hugging, or it might be, a picture of fireworks or whatever, so that you can sit there and go through this with your child before you go down to the curb. Because once you get down to the curb, there's a lot of sensory stuff going on, right? So it's almost like a social story, but you're going to do it with the pictures, and you go, look, here we are. And what we would do with Jem is say, look, this is Jem standing at the corner, and look at what a great job he's doing. Look, now he's looking this way. Now he looks that way. So we would go through the rules and show what was going to happen as a result of getting those rules, right? But we were pointing to pictures. We were languaging it, as we were saying, helping to build his receptive language, but really having him look at the pictures so that he would understand. Then we would go down, and later, when he was more verbal, he would go through the rules. He would say, first, here are the rules of when you go to the street. First, you go and you stand on the curb and you look this way, and then you look this way, and then you look this way one more time, and then if it's safe, if no car is coming, you cross the street. And in the beginning, that was the rule. No car can be coming, because we were starting on our street, very few cars, right? Later on, we talked about how far away does the car have to be, and you have to notice the car, how fast it's going, but that didn't come until he was 9. And still, he was not allowed to cross the street without somebody holding his hand. We have now done the crossing the street without somebody holding his hand, him doing it by himself with somebody standing on each side of the street to monitor, right? He is still not allowed to cross the street he's 10 and still not allowed to cross the street by himself unless somebody else says it's okay, because we're taking it by steps. But I'm going to have a 13-year-old who can cross the street safely, or I'm going to have a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, at some point he's going to be able to do it by himself, but we're taking baby steps, right? So start with a visual kind of thing, and you show the pictures if your child is visual. If your child isn't visual, think about what is your kid into? Some kids want to be behind the camera. So maybe you had them take pictures of you being safe, and then you can refer back to the pictures, and they'll like the pictures because they were the one who took them. Think outside the box. Figure out how it gets exciting to the child, but there's got to be, make it as exciting as possible teaching lesson, but there's got to be that reward. And it has to be something that's meaningful to the child. So if you're saying to the child, oh, well, you get to play with this doll, and the doll isn't something that's exciting to the child, it's going to take so long to teach this lesson. If we really get behind those powerful reinforcers, if you engage in this behavior and you do it every time, then you're going to get this reward. Now, the first time that we did it with my child, it was you cross the street once and you do this, you get a reward. And we did that for a while. We probably did that for a week, and we would go down and do it like 10 times, 3 times a day, and do that. And then it was, okay, now we're going to go down and we're going to cross the street 3 times. And then when you cross the street the 3rd time, you're going to get this reward, right? I think we started with 2 times because we crossed the street across it and then came back and then you got the reward, right? Then we started making it longer to the point where we got to the fact that he had to go downstairs and cross the street 10 times before he got a reward. Now, we were making sure that we praised him each time and keeping that energy up of, yay, you did it again. Cross again. How many? Yay, you did it again. Until eventually, all we had to do was praise him crossing the street, right? So we were fading whatever, I don't even remember, different days it was different things. It was before the video games, so there were all kinds of things that we reinforced him with that he loved. But making sure that at some point we started to fade that back. But keeping the opportunities there. So super duper important that we give lots and lots and lots and lots of opportunities to do it. And lots and lots and lots of praise and lots and lots and lots of reward. That's really the key that we want to teach anything safety-wise. Now, we've had experts on the show before talking about how to teach safety with wandering and elopement and with those negative behaviors, when we're trying to make a behavior go away instead of increase. For safety, we want to teach the looking both ways, right? That's a behavior we want to increase. When a child wanders, that's a behavior that we want to decrease, and that's a little bit different because first, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you got to figure out why. What is the function? What's the reward that they're already getting for that behavior? And we always talk about the 4 usual suspects. It's the same thing for eloping and wandering. Monica Holloway gave a great example that her son heard a loud noise and he bolted because he wanted to escape the noise. And that's a big reason why kids will escape, why they'll bolt, why they'll wander, why they'll elope, is to get away from someone or something. It can be a loud noise. It can be the fear of, somebody's going to be mad at me, or something bad is going to happen, or now it's time to go have lunch and I don't want to eat broccoli, right? It can be all kinds of things that they want to escape. But it can also be that they're running to someone or something. A lot of times our kids are fascinated by water and they want to go play in the water. This is a very common thing. They're really drawn to it. And, I've shared on the show that I've been reading the Little House on the Prairie books with my son. And I don't know whether it was Thursday night or Friday night, we got to the point and on the banks of Plum Creek, and I'd forgotten this from when I read it as a kid, but there is a body of water. And Laura writes from the perspective of a kid about how her parents took her to see the water and said, you can't go down to the water without somebody. And she was a neurotypical kid and at a very different time, right? But they said to her, and in this book, she's 7 or 8 at this time. You can't go down to the water. You can't go by yourself. Do you understand? It can be really bad. But yep, I get it. And the first opportunity she gets, she goes down to the water by herself. Now, circumstances intervene so that she doesn't get in the water. But then a couple of months later, after they've had quite a rainstorm and the banks, the water has come up the banks, she goes down and without them knowing, first sticks her hands in, then sticks her feet in, and then just says to herself, I just really want to feel what it feels like on my whole body. And she gets in the water and almost drowns because the current is taking her. And she has enough understanding that she goes through a really intense description of, I'm going to die and I'm never going to see my family again, and I should have listened to mom and pop. And my son and I read that together, and he's 10 now, and we had that conversation about how sometimes something seems like a good idea at the moment. And I thought about it, and I thought, but I could never have had this discussion with him when he was 3. And he wanted to go to the swimming pool down the street from our house. Fortunately, it was locked, right? And I did a fairly good job of keeping an eye on him. It turned this hair gray, let's say that. But everybody doesn't have the ability to make sure that all their neighbors have a fence around their pools. So we need to look at the function of the behavior. And if you have a child who's really attracted to water and will wander away, and I gave the Laura Ingalls Wilder example because I need you to know that it isn't just kids who are on the spectrum. Kids are drawn to water. You need to first, do everything you can to secure the area. Petition for a fence. Talk to your neighbor and say, I'm concerned. There should be a fence. And in some cities and in some states, there are laws saying you've got to have a fence around a pool. So, put it out there and ask, put the locks that you need to put up there, but you need to be working on showing the child how to appropriately to ask for the water and making sure that whenever possible, you reward them with something that like the water when they've asked for it. Great opportunity to work with an expert. We've had several experts here on the show talking about that kind of thing, but don't let it go. There are steps that they can take. They're so individual. I'm not going to go into what they are here because it won't be of service to anybody out there, but make sure that you get help and know that there is help and that they have techniques that they've been able to change these behaviors in our kids, whether they're profoundly affected or high functioning. It is a matter of life and death. We're almost out of time, and so I'm going to have Emily show you some of the different ways that you can get in contact with us. But I'm going to end the show by saying that I got into a conversation the other day where I was telling someone about autism, and I was saying, the thing that people don't realize is that the funding for autism and autism treatments are so much less than the other big things that can affect a children, like pediatric cancer, like pediatric AIDS, like pediatric diabetes. And that, in fact, there's more cases of autism in the United States diagnosed in a year than those three biggies combined. And yet the funding for autism is so incrementally less. And this person said, well, but the difference between those three things and autism is that you don't die from autism. And I said, bless you for saying that so that I can tell you you're ill-informed, that children die from autism almost on a daily basis because these children that drown when they elope or get hit by a car when they elope, the only reason why that happened was because they had autism and they didn't get treatment for it. So I put that out to all of you, and don't let your child be one of the statistics. Get the help that you need and write into us if you don't know how to do that. I'd be happy to help you figure that out. And there are funding sources that will help that. Absolutely. We're out of time. We're going to be back tomorrow with more exciting stuff here on Autism Live. Make sure that you're here with us then. And until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.